Hey there, friends, and welcome to Montessori 101, a live show from Child of the Redwoods, all about the magic of Montessori. We believe that every child deserves a Montessori education. I'm Aubrey Hargis.
And I'm David Hargis. So whether you are live, we see you out there. We've got a bunch of folks today, or maybe you're watching the replay, maybe you're listening to the podcast version. However it is you're coming to this content, we are just really happy that you are with us. And if you'd like to learn more about the work that we're doing at Child of the Redwoods, you can head over to our website, childoftheredwoods.com.
Awesome. So awesome. So today we've got another installment in our awesome lesson. I don't even know if teenagers say awesome ththese days. Does it date us? It probably dates us.
I think the gray in my beard dates me fine, so I'm not really worried about my language.
We have a shush. We're going to worry about language today because this is actually an awesome lesson from our language curriculum in Montessori.
Words matter. That's right.
That's right. And we are talking about the alphabet roll.
Yes.
So we're going to roll with the alphabet.
I love the alphabet roll. It's really fun. I mean, there's a lot of, I think, when I think about a primary or pre-kindergarten or little ones learning, you think about alphabet blocks, ABCs, things like that. Because we teach children to read at a young age, but the alphabet roll, I guess, kind of fits into that, but it's pretty special too, right?
Well, yeah, it's not as popular, I think, as I would love. I mean, I would love to see alphabet rolls at Target and like just mainstream stores. I think that would be so great.
Yeah. So
it is, what's upsetting to me is when I see products that are designed to teach children the alphabet and they actually have it kind of wrong, the initial, like they won't be using an initial sound. We'll talk a lot about that later. Or just like the examples they choose aren't greatest examples of what you might choose in order to teach that particular.
Well, we teach like the alphabet song, right? So A, B, C, but really, as you're going to talk about, it should be right? Like, right?
I know.
So anyway,
imagine an alphabet song where we taught the initial sounds instead of the alphabet letters. How amazing would that be?
So on that note, what in general is the alphabet roll lesson? What is the objective?
Okay, so the objective of this particular lesson is that we are helping children to solidify their understanding of those initial sounds. We are helping them practicing associating that initial sound with a letter of the alphabet, which everyone might think is pretty easy, Apple says right? But it's
not always, right? Apple doesn't always say
it's actually harder than a lot of people think. It is something that we have to specifically teach children. And with the alphabet roll, we are coming with the assumption that children have already worked on their sounds in a Montessori way. So this comes after you've introduced things like the sandpaper letters, and you've kind of done a lot of I Spy work, that sort of thing kind of comes first. So in this lesson, we are helping them to refine their initial sound letter correspondence skills. And we're also going to be teaching sequencing through this activity too, which is really, really cool because I don't know how many of you are dictionary lovers out there.
That's right. In the chat, if you're a lover of the dictionary, let us know.
Like the old school dictionary. I mean, I guess I'm in love with still dictionaries today.
They are so rare, but yeah.
Yes. Did you have a dictionary when you were a child?
Yes. Oh, yes.
And did you use it?
I did. I loved my dictionary. I also had those Charlie Brown. We actually gave them to the kids because they kept them. It was the Charlie Brown Encyclopedia, but it was also very much like a dictionary, and it was just a collection of
things that begin
with certain letters organized by type, and I loved those. I love those, and that love of dictionaries and words and etymology just continued. I remember when I graduated from college, my mentor professor gave me a really thick dictionary, and I kept it around for years, and it was just great fun to have. It was like a real
Yeah.
rite of passage.
Well, as a child, I remember owning a dictionary and just like every once in a while I'd want to open it and I would paw through the pages, and especially words that had pictures with them
Yeah,
would pop out.
exactly.
And then I would want to read it, read the definition, and maybe some things like when I was very little, grammar didn't necessarily make a lot of sense
Mhm.
right away. Who cares if something is a participle or
Yeah.
or a preposition for that matter.
Mhm.
But just that initial experience with all of these words being sequenced,
Yes.
in a very elaborate way, it was just very exciting.
Yeah, and I
And
want to extend just a really quick because we have, our kids are teenagers,
yeah,
and our youngest is in choir, and he's learning a song, and a lot of these songs are in Latin, or they can be in Latin. And we used a dictionary related skill with him very recently when we were helping him understand the translation of some of the words. And the one I'm thinking is Ave Maris Stella, and which means Hail Queen of the Sea in Latin.
Star of the
Star of the Sea. So we broke down those words like maris, and we're thinking about maritime, marine. And this is another thing that happens in a dictionary, right? Is you can start to look at all those roots and hearing those sounds like marine, maris, marine, uh, whatever, maritime. The lessons that we're even talking about here, which is for maybe a 3-year-old, they continue on and on and on, this sort of hearing different sounds.
Yeah, it's true. I feel like you're jumping a little bit ahead, but it's good to get an idea of like
Well, I
where
like
we're
to jump in
going with
because I
this.
want the folks out there to know that I think sometimes we think, okay, this is for little kids. Little kids do alphabet rolls. Little kids play with blocks, and then they grow out of that and they do real work. And one of the reasons I like to jump ahead is that I really want everybody out there to know that these little kid activities that we focus on that are so awesome, they're actually incredibly important. They are the building blocks, no pun intended, of all the learning that's going to happen. So much later, when they're into word etymologies and they're thinking about Greek and Latin roots, or even later when they're trying to do some basic translations from one language to another, or Latin to English in our case, having that skill set that they built early on comes back around. So even though I think we perceive the primary and the toddler years, the preschool years as baby learning, it's actually, as Maria realized and teaches us, the crucible. It is the most important.
So, yes, agree with all that. So the alphabet roll specifically, it is teaching initial sound to letter correspondence, the relationship between sound and initial sound and letter. And we're also practicing sequencing skills, which is leading to alphabetization skills. And it's also a really big work. So
it is.
It's actually a big,
physically big, like you enrolled this.
well, I was thinking cognitively big as well. I mean, both. It's a physically big work, but it's also cognitively big, much bigger than people tend to think of. Yeah. So let's talk about what you need for
what kind of stuff do you need to make this lesson happen?
So you need an alphabet roll strip, and we're going to show you a really easy way that you can make one at home. I'm going to just unfurl this for you so you can see. Okay, this one is in print, but you could also have your alphabet roll in cursive, and you can see how long, how big of a work it is.
I'm a fairly tall person, and it's longer than my arm span.
And the reason that it's so long is because we want space in between each of these letters, because we're going to put a picture or an object in this space.
That's right. And the version we're using here, we will have pictures that we've created, and we also, for this version that we're using, we have a version that looks like it was printed here, and we also have a cursive version. And sometimes there are variations where it's upper and lower or lowercase.
Yeah, it's a different work.
Okay, right. But at the end of the day, you're talking about a long, in this case, strip of paper with the letters, all 26, in the case of English, the American alphabet, all 26 letters.
Yes, and we're not talking about uppercase.
Only lowercase.
Only focusing on lowercase.
But it could be script or print. block.
Correct.
Mhm.
Okay, so you need a roll, a strip of alphabet letters, all right, and nicely spaced. And you'll also notice that ours are either in red or blue, depending on whether they are a vowel or a consonant.
Because in Montessori, blue is for vowels and red is for consonants.
That's right.
And you'll see that consistently throughout the materials.
Yeah. And Y is really the only special one. It can be either a consonant or a vowel. We usually teach consonant first.
That's right.
Okay.
So in this version, I saw that we had it in blue, but it could be in blue or it could be in red.
It could be, and that's because this is a prototype, and that's something that will be changing for the final version.
That's right. Big reveal. We're actually gonna make this available to folks. So, since we did all the work to create it.
Okay, so you need your roll strip, and you also need objects or pictures. And this is just an example, just some pictures. You'll need some pictures or objects to go with it. And you want one for every single letter. So here I have a moon for and I have a cat for right? So you want one for every single letter, except
that's right. There is a trick.
The letter X.
Yeah. What is the deal with that? I can think of words that begin with X. Xylophone, X-ray. Why didn't I get to draw a picture of a xylophone?
It bugged you, didn't it?
It did. I wanted to draw that xylophone.
I know, because there's that blank space there that is like, what?
That's right, because the X is on the roll, right? It's right here. Yeah. So why is there an X, but there's no object for X?
Okay, so the deal with X is, this is something that, for those of you who have a very logical brain structure and you want every little blank spot checked off, or maybe those of you who really just love checking off the lessons that you've done and things, this is gonna make you feel a little uncomfortable. But we leave the X box blank because we're focusing on initial sounds. And in Montessori, the initial sound that we want associated with the letter X sounds like this. It's like a K and an S together. And there is actually in English really no great example of a word that begins with x. Words in English just don't begin with x.
There are lots of words that have that sound at the end.
That's right. You can think of a lot of words.
Fox.
That's right. There's a lot of words that end in x. So it could be like fox, box, six, that sort of thing. But this work is for initial sounds, not for ending sounds.
That's a separate kind of lesson, right?
It would be a totally separate lesson.
Ending sounds are different lessons.
That's right. And this one is initial sounds. And so if you wanted to make up another alphabet roll for ending sounds, you totally could. That would be really, really fun and really interesting and hard to do, because our brains are trained to think beginning first. And so I think an alphabet roll set with ending sounds would be kind of amazing.
Yeah.
And then you would definitely be able to include the X. But for a very first lesson, we're only focusing on initial sounds. And, words like xylophone and X-ray, you might think, but Aubrey, those start with X. But xylophone actually starts with Z. And so we would actually have to, if we had a xylophone here, we would have to put it under the letter Z. And we're just you could, but we didn't pick a xylophone because it would be kind of confusing, right? So the other thing that people think about is X-ray, which you do hear the X sound in. X. But if you say it really slowly,
X-ray.
Go ahead and say it super slow for us.
X-ray.
Even slower.
X.
What do you hear? You hear eh. So we would have to classify that under the E for eh, because we're focusing on that short E sound. So that is why there is no X in that box. And actually, that's kind of a point of interest for kids too.
Yeah, it's fun, right?
They would find it, they would also feel uncomfortable that there's nothing there, and they definitely would notice it. Those of you who are in the primary course right now, or who have taken our primary course, probably know the spindle box lesson, where we have the number 0 through, on up. And the 0 actually has no spindles in it because there is nothing in that box because it's zero.
Right.
And that's the point. And it's kind of the same with the initial sounds with X. It's a harder concept for kids to get, but they will get it. And it leads to some really interesting conversation.
It does. So how do you actually put this stuff together? Looks like we need a little container for the objects.
Mm-hmm.
We need the roll with the letters,
Mm-hmm.
which represent the sounds, and then the objects themselves. In this case, we're using images. They could be actual physical objects, like toys or something that has, but it's very, very clear that you have the sound, right? So we were talking about walnuts earlier today, right? Right? It would go in a W, but a child might look at that and think nuts, like any other kind of nut. And they might classify it under the N. So better to try and, when you're picking objects, if you're making it yourself, make sure that it's not confusing to the child, I would assume.
So you're always going to want to do a work first before you present it to a child. Any kind of work you're going to present to a child, you want to do it first. And if you're mixing things up, thinking that a picture of a walnut is supposed to go with the letter N, then the child probably will too. But there are ways to get around that as well. So you asked me to give an overview of the lesson. So first of all, you need to make an alphabet roll. You can do this yourself with just art roll paper. Just cut a long strip of it. A lot of people have that handy at home. Write your letters in red or in blue or yellow and green or whatever alternate you want for the vowels and the consonants. Or you could use a printable like ours. We'll be publishing this on our website later on this week. And as we talked about, we're in the proofing stages of ours. So you're gonna have to look for that in the store. What else? So you also need objects. So those could be really simple household objects, like an actual spoon for an S, or you could actually use a key, off of your keychain for a K. And you can just kind of get creative with that.
But not a knife.
No, you could use a knife. You just have to make sure that it's a blunt-tipped, not sharp knife.
It's a knife.
Okay. All right, don't confuse them.
Don't confuse them?
Oh, my goodness. Okay,
anyway.
So, all right, so let me wrap this up. I know you're really excited to jump in to all the details. Okay, so what I did in the classroom to make one, if you don't want to print one out and have it made out of paper, you can go to a fabric store and buy a long piece of oilcloth or vinyl. This is what I did. And then it was super durable. It lasted in the classroom for years and years. It rolled up really nicely. And all I had to do is I looked for a remnant of a vinyl piece from my local fabric store, and I just cut out a long strip and I wrote on it with Sharpies. And over time, the Sharpies lasted for several years. But if you were to get it out today, that Sharpie would have kind of gotten a little bit fuzzy, So I would say it lasted many, many years, but nothing lasts
you used
forever.
that in the classroom, though, right?
I did.
For somebody who's doing this at home.
Back in 2002.
Yeah, so this is a pretty. If you have a little one and you're wanting to do this, then for sure it'll probably make it for the duration.
I would also say that it's not to spend an enormous amount of time making one that's going to be able to last for 30 years, because your child is probably, once they're ready for the lesson, if they really are good at knowing their sounds, they're going to blow through it, and it's not going to just last.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in a minute, but this is an awesome lesson because it's so important, but it actually is fairly small in the amount of time that you
It's a pretty short lesson. Yeah, it's a very impactful lesson. And when your child is ready for it, they might want to repeat it several times, and then they're usually done with it.
Okay, so show us how you actually would do this. So I'll unroll. So you would take your roll, I guess, and you would lay it on the ground. No? All right, tell me. How do I do this?
Okay, so first, you have to look at your objects first. So I just have some in the basket, and I'm just going to randomly pick one out. Okay. And what I got is pretty cute. It's a little goat. You probably recognize this.
I've seen that before.
Yes, David drew all of these. So he knows them fairly well. So here I have a little goat, and I'm just going to talk about it with my child first. What do you see? What is the name of this object? It's a goat. What do you notice about the goat? And you're just going to have a conversation about it, and make sure that you use the name goat several times in your conversation with your child.
So this is how you get around the walnut versus nut.
That's right. And then you're going to take another one out of the basket. And what is this? Oh, it's a leaf. What color is this leaf? Let's put this leaf right next to this goat. Now, goats eat leaves.
Yes, that's right.
Right. Yum, yum, yum. And then you'll dig in here and you'll get another little thing out. Let's see what else. I showed you the moon already. Here's a little feather. And maybe you relate this to, can you go find a real feather in our house? So you're connecting the picture of the object with a real object. You're creating memories with it. You're jogging the memory. And the reason you start here with naming these objects and talking about them is, it has several benefits. First, you are strengthening your child's receptive and expressive skills, right? And you want them familiar with these objects. Some of them your child might not really be super familiar with. I'm just going to find the picture. They probably are going to look at this and know that this is an apple, right? But how about this one? Okay. Well, this is a picture of quartz. When David suggested making it purple, I said, is quartz actually purple? And then we looked it up, and indeed, quartz is purple.
So it is,
yes, it's all colors. And so we chose purple for ours. But a child looking at this, what might you say? You might say it's a rock, right? So then you would want to have a conversation.
Crystal. Yeah, any number of things.
Yeah, any number of things. So you want to have a conversation. It is a piece of quartz, and that is a type of rock. Maybe you go online and you find pictures of quartz.
Maybe you have quartz at home. So a lot of folks will have a little piece of a quartz somewhere.
Or have a little piece of quartz at home. All right. So you are just having conversations about all of these little things that are your objects or your pictures of objects first. Your child is using their expressive language skills. If it is takes too long to get through the entire basket of objects, it's okay to make this a multi-day lesson, maybe every day, especially with a little toddler. You're just going to get out like 5 to 8 of them to work with at a time. See how far you get. And then once your child knows the names of these things, maybe they get a few mixed up every once in a while, but for the most part, they know what is in here. Then you show them the alphabet roll, and now you can unfurl it.
And it's really long.
Yeah, so you're going to roll this out on the floor. Hallway is a great place for it, or just anywhere on your floor. And then you're going to take a picture out of your bag. Let me see if I can just pick something that we haven't looked at yet. This one. Do the octopus. And then you're going to name it octopus. When I do I usually like octopus. And so you're emphasizing the initial sound, octopus, And then most people would say, aha, you're just going to go right to that letter O and stick it on. But nope, don't do that yet. Why not? Because you actually want to go to the beginning of the alphabet, because remember, part of the purpose of this activity is to sequence these things, and because this will give your child an opportunity to use their visual discrimination skills.
Which is a big thing. That's a big part of this lesson, right?
It is. And then they will discover where the aw is. And so they're actually going to hold it up to each letter. Aw. Nope, that's ah. Aw. 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 Nope, that's aw.
And some of these are going to be harder, like this A, right? Oh, yeah.
Eventually, just keep going, and eventually, there it is. Octopus. It goes right there. Now, the cool thing about making it out of paper is that if you wanted to, you could get a little bit of glue, which we happen to have over here, and then make sure that you go watch our
lesson on how to glue.
Our lesson on how to properly glue. That is actually how I glued this strip together. It was the proper way this morning. And then you can have your child actually glue the octopus right under the aw if you want to. Okay. You would want to make sure that you have fact checked it, kind of checked it, made sure that it's in the right place. This is a work that you're going to be doing with your child. So the two of you are sitting together, you're having fun with it, you're naming the objects, you're talking about the objects, and then you're sequencing them together. And every time you pick a new one, here is cat, you're going to go back to the beginning. There it is. Cat. All right.
And some of these are going to be trickier than others, right? Like octopus and
what if your child says cat?
Yeah, right.
And then puts it over here for K?
Yes, that's right.
Right. So, I mean, that is technically correct.
It is.
It's not the way we spell cat, but technically it is the sound of K, right? And
so is that wrong or not?
I always let it go. I don't ever correct.
Well, what is the now I'm curious.
I always say, that it does say K, and K says K, and C also says K, and we also have a kite in here.
Yeah, that's right.
And so if your child were to mix these two up, honestly, like this is a sound lesson, not a spelling lesson. So
that's a really important distinction.
A lot of adults get caught up in the difference between learning the sounds and learning how to spell words. And so often a child will put a cat under the letter K or a kite under the letter C, and the adult will go in and say, oh, no, actually it does say K, but that's wrong. It's actually spelled with a K, and in Montessori we would just say, like, if it says K, then it says K.
Because this is really training.
And eventually your child will learn the difference. They will read the word cat enough times so that they will memorize that it's a C. And your child, if they're at this level, they may already have that association, but they may not. And if they don't, that's totally fine. Initial sound lesson.
Right, because this is not, again, it's not about learning the alphabet per se. It's about learning the sounds, the auditory and visual discrimination.
That's right. All right, let's talk about how this fits into the academic areas that we have in our programs.
Sure, here you go.
And we're talking about primary, constellation, and lower elementary.
That's right. So we would put this under, it's mostly in primary. There is some refresher in the lower elementary.
But you totally could do this with lower L if you have a child learning their initial sounds.
Absolutely. What we always want to say, so we would say that this is a level 2 activity in the primary curriculum, and we'll talk about what that means in just a second. Generally, it means a 3 to 4 year old, a child who's going into that second half of the first plane, will have a readiness. But remember, it's not about sort of, okay, they're at this age, this must be the trigger. No two human beings are identical. So readiness is also not going to be prescriptively identical for every child. What you're instead looking for, especially in Montessori, but in any learning environment, is signs of readiness. So is your child ready for this lesson? And that means looking at the prior knowledge and skills that the child has acquired. So we then want to match this lesson or learning to that readiness. So if we see those signs of readiness, we're going to then pull this out. And if we're not seeing those signs of readiness, we're going to go to a predecessor skill. So let's talk about those predecessor skills. Let's talk about related skills, and then let's talk about where you would go next.
Okay, sure. Yeah, we kind of started with that a little bit, right? Talking about I Spy.
Yeah,
that's right. It can even go a bit further back.
That's right. So in level 1 of the reading and writing, meaning that for the earliest, for the youngest ones, you're looking at matching. So matching object to object. So you might, let's say you had this set that we've made, you might match or picture to object or picture to picture. So this would be a picture. So you might match the picture of the apple to a second picture of an apple versus the picture of the kite. Or trickier than that, let's see, we have a moon, and somewhere we have a beach ball in here too. So matching
I'm gonna find the beach ball. Okay.
So, right, they're similar shapes. But so the child would be looking for other types of details in these pictures. But it's not just pictures. It could also be 3-dimensional objects.
So just to be clear, object to object, this would not be an example of one.
No, but this would be picture.
Matching beach ball to beach ball, or moon to moon. And they might have the same shape.
Right.
But you would have 2 of each.
Exactly.
Okay.
Right. Thank you for clarifying. Because, this is not a match, but it's an example of how a child might look at these two objects
Yeah.
and get
Or you'd have two of
confused.
these tables and match table to table.
That's right. So what they would be
or
looking for is the other beach ball.
leaf to leaf.
Or if it's a spoon, an actual
Ooh.
physical spoon, or an actual apple
And you could
and another
easily
actual apple and matching them together.
yeah. So you could match a real apple to the picture of the apple.
That's another variation.
You could also print out two of these sets.
That's right.
And do that lesson first with the same activity, and then get two lessons in one.
That's true. That's right. So exactly, because that's a predecessor. And it kind of actually goes with the first part of the alphabet roll too, where you're saying, "Oh, this is a kite, kite." You're not necessarily focusing on that sound. What you're really looking at is the picture, and then looking for the same picture in a pile or laid out on your work area, or actual physical object, or a physical object to a picture of an object, right? So that's part of it. You're also wanting to teach the child, make sure that the child has skill and confidence in vocabulary names and descriptions. So can they understand, and can they come back to you and explain things like, this is a kite. This kite has blue, and it is, I don't know, however you would describe this. Look at these blue triangles. Oh, there's a string and little ribbons. So you're using descriptive language. These look purple to me. So you're using descriptive language to just with an object, whatever that object is. In this case, I'm using our little pictures again. And you're helping your child develop that vocabulary, because they'll need that vocabulary in order to do that alphabet roll. Okay. So after you've kind of seen readiness in those areas, they're able to match in a variety of ways, a real object to a picture, or vice versa, or pictures to pictures. And you feel like they're really getting the sense of how to describe and using descriptive language.
You want to know what I just noticed?
Yeah, tell me.
Well, I noticed that, just in the pictures we have here, like this is an egg. I don't know if our people can see this. And this is a potato. Those shapes are really similar.
They are. And the colors are similar.
The colors are kind of similar. But wouldn't that be fun to go get a real egg and a real potato?
Yes.
And then actually compare them in real life. And then I was also looking at, we talked about the beach ball and moon. We've also got this little ball of yarn. So, these are all discussions that you can have with your child about pictures that go far beyond the actual activity.
Yeah. And again, the purpose here is visual discrimination. You're helping the child develop visual discrimination skills. And additionally, you're wanting them to develop the ability to name things and describe them. So that's a level one. And so once you see readiness in those areas, then they'll be ready for things like the alphabet roll, which is, we also call it the matching alphabet lesson. Other things that they'll be ready for are figure ground activities, where you might put the objects down, like let's say a pile of laundry, and they have their sock is in the laundry, and they're able to go grab it. Or doing an I Spy book, right? This is where you had mentioned the I Spy game. That is something that we would say a child who has shown readiness in those other areas and is now ready for the alphabet roll. This is a similar kind of a related visual discrimination activity that you would present. They would also do the what's missing game. That's where you lay out an object, they turn their eyes, and then they look back, and you've removed something, and they have to tell you what's missing. Again, this is about strengthening visual discrimination. So after the level 2 visual discrimination, once they get to level 3, we're really not going to focus specifically on visual discrimination lessons anymore. There are no more lessons, but the skills, just like I said earlier, those skills are foundational and they're going to build. So what are you looking for after they've successfully completed things like the figure ground and so forth? You're going to move to things that are more focused on phonological awareness, that's sound awareness, and auditory discrimination, not just visual, which you've already started to introduce with the alphabet roll, and you're going to make it more interesting. So here we have our goat. What about matching the ending sound? So you could use that alphabet roll again to match to the t, or
Oh, we've not created it so that every single letter is represented
no, but
independently. But you
no,
could use the same objects and then just like see, where they land. That would
yeah,
be really fun.
that's right. So I'll just pull one of yarn.
Mhm.
And again, what you're having them do is focus on a different sound, right? The sound that comes at the end of the word, which might be harder to hear. That's why it's a little bit later.
Mhm.
Similarly, you may have them focus on the middle sound. Oh,
Mhm. And that's the long O.
oh, that's right.
Mhm.
So in this case, you wouldn't use the same alphabet roll because you'd want to have.
I think you could.
Well, don't
If
you?
your child, but you
Hmm.
want to make your child make sure that your child understands that the letter O says both aw and O. So
Yeah, just like A says A and ah.
Mhm.
So sometimes you'll see variations where it'll be like a O or something to represent a long O versus
Well, that would be ooh.
ooh, ah, oh. Feel like a song is coming on. Right. Anyway, so you'll see the different variations so they can match to those sounds. But the point is that this is where you would go next, right?
You can get creative with it, and you can use it to teach too.
That's right. So, and then of course, in that level 3, what you're really wanting is to have a real print rich environment where children are able to do pre-reading, where they might be doing pretend reading or other activities where they're starting to look at objects on a page and the text itself, and they're starting to make connections and starting to discriminate on the page between the different letters and where letters are versus images and other things that lead to successful literacy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So what makes this Montessori? Is that a word? Montessori? I've coined a term.
Now.
What makes this unique? So that's the progression. And, as I said at the beginning, there's alphabet blocks and so forth, but this is special. Why is it special? What makes this uniquely Montessori?
Well, I will be the first to tell you, I am not certain Maria Montessori had an alphabet roll specifically in her classroom. I don't know if you look back to all of the classic activities, if alphabet roll is specifically listed. It is definitely something that you might see in a traditional classroom well, which is totally fine. Montessori activities and traditional activities can intermix. What we're doing in Montessori is we're actually we're being like more fussy with it. I was gonna say anal retentive, but we're like being kind of cringy about it almost. We're really, really critically looking at the activity to make sure that it's like follows this beautiful developmental sequence and that we're teaching the letters in the exact right way.
Well, I love that
we
teach the sounds.
Yes.
And I think that's the thing, right?
I said what I thought was the thing. It was like our attention to detail, right?
Well, I thought that was a little mean. I was saying something nicer.
Okay. Well.
But actually, there's a bigger one too, don't you think?
Well, this lesson specifically is for those initial sounds. And so any of the toys that you might find at stores, I think are kind of suspect. I think it's lovely when they are.
Well, because they tend to be about A, B, C, right?
Yeah. I think it's lovely when they do follow the initial sound rule, as we learn in Montessori. But in Montessori, we teach writing rather than reading, and this kind of leads us in that direction. One, right? Yeah.
That's the big thing that makes Montessori this unique, I think, to Montessori, or more broadly, is that focus on writing before reading feels inverse to how we normally can think that children would learn, but it's such an amazing innovation. And so learning this kind of auditory and visual discrimination that comes from an activity like the alphabet roll leads itself into that. So other things they might be learning, we talked about descriptive language, letter sounds, listening for beginning sounds, and then extending that further as they get older. But for the alphabet roll specifically, learning those beginning sounds, and learning special rules like the X rule, or as you pointed out, like cat and C and the K, and getting the child to start thinking about that stuff. That's really fun too.
Yeah. We're not correcting. We're just exploring. We're seeing where the child goes with it. It's an open-ended activity, and it can be really fun.
Yeah. All right.
we're going to wrap it up there, friends. Thank you so much for joining us for the alphabet roll lesson. If the Montessori method and all of the awesome lessons associated are calling to you, come to our website, childoftheredwoods.com.
Yeah, that's right. And if you have any questions or feedback, we always love to hear from you guys. You can reach us at hello@Child of the Redwoods.
Yes. Oh, and like and subscribe does actually help our YouTube channel
It
to
does.
get more views. And the more Montessori for everyone, the better.
That's
So
right. We
thank
want
you
to
if you
spread
have
the word
given us
about
a
this
little
amazing curriculum.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, we love hearing your thoughts. You can leave a comment on the video. You can like and subscribe. You can email us. You can get more information about it. And we will have this alphabet roll on our website in a few days. So if you go head over to childoftheredwoods.com, you'll be able to see it for yourself.
All right. Thank you so much, friends. Mwah.
See you next
Take
week.
care.